Hi again. Today I'm going to show you my lamp that I use 3D bought glass fish and then incorporated them into my lamp. So I got these little adorable 3D fish, and then I first had to foil them so that I could solder them into my project. So I took the normal foil that you buy. I use black backed foil, and I cut it in half as I showed you so that I'm not using a really wide piece of foil. I need just enough foil to go around where I want to solder and to wrap just a teeny bit around each side of the fish so I can try to hold them in place. And as you can see, it's pretty tedious work because you got to get it right along where you want it. So I would stick this foil around the fish and then smooth it down. It's a little tricky sometimes to get it started. Yeah, I was staining some wood, so one of my hands is a little bit stained by mistake. I'm trying to get it to stick. It is hard. You may have to take your glass figurines and clean them with isopropyl alcohol, and then make sure they're really dry. That way they don't have any dirt or anything on them. They have to be really quite clean in order for the foil to stick. There it goes, and you can see that I'm pressing down on both sides of the foil as I go. That little black stick is a plastic probe that I bought on Amazon. I bought a whole bunch of them. They're very handy. I use them all the time. They have a chiseled end, one of the ends, and it's especially for something like this, it's very handy because you can use it to nudge the foil into the little cracks that you want. So I'm using it right there to try to encourage the foil to go where I want it to. I do have a video that's specifically on foiling objects, and it's mainly on different thicknesses of round cabochons and things like that, and crystals. I cut the foil so that it's a little easier at the end to get that nasty area that's really kind of difficult. And you want the foil to overlap, of course, when you get to the end. So it's just like foiling your flat glass. It's just that I'm foiling something that's a little three-dimensional. And you can see that it's very important not to use the whole width of the foil because you would really be covering a lot of the detail of the little fish. So that's why I just use a little stripe. And for these, I'm using half the width of 7/32 inch foil. So the fun thing was with these fish I got from Amazon was that they Came with a nice set. I can't remember exactly how many, but they were all different. So that was a lot of fun. So I'm quickly doing a few more. Now I have my little fish. I have a whole bunch of them all foiled, and I'm going to start soldering them in place into my lamp frame. That one broke. I'll have to fix them later. So I have a lot to choose from. I'm not going to use them all on this project. I can't use that lamp shade because it's too small, so I'll have to use a bigger one. And the metal lampshade is a shade that I got at Goodwill, or one that I happen to have around, that I took the cover off of the shade, all the fabric and everything that was on it, and then I wrapped the metal of the shade frame with foil because the solder was not sticking to that type of metal. Now you can try, when you have a lampshade frame, before you spend all the time foiling it, you can try to see if solder will stick to it, because sometimes it does work. I'm working on a lampshade right now that the solder does adhere to it, which is really handy. So before I can attach it to the lampshade, I need to put wire all around the little fish so that it's stronger for when I attach it to the lampshade. Because if I went directly to trying to attach this fish, the foil is not going to be strong enough. So the foil allows me to attach wire, and I just bend the wire as I go all the way around. I believe I'm using 22 gauge wire for this. You try to find a wire that is pliable so you can actually get around all those little shapes pretty easily, but not so thin that you're really not going to have much strength. So it's kind of a blend of what you can get away with. And see, I'm bending an area so that it seems to fit the contour of the little fishy, and then soldering that area down. So yeah, I could have used much thinner wire and it would have been, really easy to do this step, but then it wouldn't support the fish very much. So it's you just take the wire and bend away for a while and then flux it and then add solder. And you can tack little areas, and then when you're done going all the way around, then you can just add solder to the areas that you didn't completely do. Again, if you have a little probe guide like I have, you can get into the little sharp angles of the contour. Again, you got to watch out for holding the wire really close to where you're going to solder, because yes, it will get hot. So right now I'm just going to go around and make sure all the areas are soldered to the foil. And I'm using little bits of solder that happen to fall off the project. Never throw away any of your solder that dropped off your project, because there's always you can use it. See, I have a little pile over there on the right of little scraps, and you can just reuse those globs. And he looks pretty good. Where the wire ends, you just want to make sure that you put a little extra solder there so it kind of blends into the beginning of the wire. So this is the lampshade that I already covered in foil, just wrapping around my lampshade. And I have my little fish, and I'm clamping it in place where I want my little fish to go. And I attached a wire to the side of the frame. And then I'm going to continue now to solder my little fishy to the wire. Right there, the tail touched the edge of the frame, so I soldered that on. And now I have a wire that I'm going to blend into the contour of the fish and solder that on. It's a little tricky sometimes to hold it just right. Then I choose another fishy. And this fish, I just couldn't get it to stay exactly where I wanted. So there's different things you can put behind your frame to help hold your items. This is a piece of foam that I created. I have a video of how I made foam molds for stained glass work. That was my latest video. And this is one of the molds I made, and it's just reuse it whenever I am working on a lampshade that it will fit. And no, it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to give you the start of where you want to hold your object. See, that's much easier. Now I have something that it's resting against, and I'm soldering little bits as I go. Now I'm getting another fish ready for the project. Sometimes it's hard to know where you should start your wire. I use bare copper wire. You can also get tinned wire that's already has a tin on it, so that it's already been soldered once, so that it's really easy for the soldering process to stick to it. They're usually a little more expensive, and I use those wires in other areas of my projects, but for most of the time I use bare copper wire. Now I'm using 14 gauge copper wire to add little swirls and details above my little fish. And I'm going to be leaving areas with like circles of wire that I'm going to attach glass blobs to, like for like little bubble type stuff. I'm using a pen right there to make it. That was not a very good idea because it's stuck to the pen, so I'm not going to use that pen anymore. But I use circular objects to create the circles that I use. Now I'm making a little curlicue. It's whatever you want to do, but I did not want to fill all the space above my fish with solid glass. I am filling those spaces with swirls of wire and glass globs. "14 gauge is a nice gauge because it's pretty pliable, but it's visible, because when I add solder and then black patina to my project, I want these swirlies to show because they're part of the design. So I don't want them done in really, really thin wire because then they won't have any substance to them. Now to attach them in place, I'll use a thinner grade wire, like maybe 26 gauge or 28 gauge, something that's thinner, because it's a lot easier to wrap around my my frame. I have another video on making a half shade with a lot of metal and wire, and I also use this technique of making shapes with 1 gauge wire and then attaching them to each other with a thinner wire. And you can see that little loop right in the middle right there. That's where I will put a glass glob. So if you just wrap your wire around an object, you can use that to make it completely round. This is a thinner wire I'm adding right now, so I use a variety of wires for the swirls and stuff. This was a 22 gauge wire right there that I'm adding. That just gives a little variety to your project. And then I figure the 22 gauge is thin enough that I can just wrap it right around the side, and I don't have to use a thinner gauge to attach it. So I wrapped it around the pliers right there to make it like a little coily guy. And then I spread the coily guy out so it made like a swirl that goes within itself. And there's no law about where you could want to put these little swirly things, just wherever they fit. When they touch the fish themselves, I will end up soldering them to the fish, and that will in turn help support the fish. It's almost like sewing on the little pieces of wire. So I'm wrapping around and then pulling tight. Sometimes I use old fabric to help support the inside of the frame, so you can lean things against them when you're soldering. Right now I'm adding pieces of sea glass to the bottom under the fishies. Now these pieces of sea glass I foiled. I believe I used about a quarter or a third of the width of the 7/32 inch foil, because I just want to use get the very edge of the sea glass. And most of these sea glasses I also have already tinned all the way around, so the foil's been tinned. But there's some pieces that I use that I hadn't yet tinned, so I just kind of tinned them after I attached them. I show how I foiled these in my foiling video. So sea glass is very irregular, so you just kind of have to keep playing with it till you get a piece that's the right size and the right color and kind of fits into your project. Since this one hadn't been tinned originally, I had to go around the outside of it. Now that piece of foam, that white glob right there on the right, that is a piece of foam left over from when I was making my foam molds, and it's really handy because it's a little bit, it's probably like, I don't know, a couple inches tall, and it's very nice to hold my projects while I'm soldering. Right now I am flowing solder on top of everything. So I put flux on it, and then I'm just soldering on top of all my wires and everything. This is because I'm going to use black patina on everything when I'm done. So I want everything to have solder on it so that the black patina will react with it. So that foam allows me to just stab into it with those little clips that I have, and it's very handy. So use up your little pieces of solder that you have. You can use tweezers to hold them like I did a few minutes ago on this video, or just hold them yourself. As long as you don't heat up the solder too close to your fingers, you won't get burned. And when the solder gets too small, use a pair of pliers to hold it. So you want to just keep going and going until you finish soldering everything. Now you also need to solder the back side of everything, underneath, because you want the patina to stick to that also, so that everything is uniform. I have a cup right there that I have lots of little scraps of solder in it, so I just pull those out when I need to. These are blobs I made in the microwave kiln, and I have a video showing how I made those. And I'm using these blobs along with some other glass circles that I have for the air bubbles. That one right there is one that I made in the microwave, and same with the one right above it. So I'm putting these on or in my little circles that I left when I made those wired curlicues. So I'm putting solder all the way around them. And then I look for, there's a nice spot for one. And I try to find one of my glass globs that's the right size. Put flux around it and then solder it on. And then I didn't have quite the size that I wanted, so I had to go back and make some more globs. Which is why my glass globs in my microwave demo were all blue, because this is the project. This is a ring I made with wire, and I'm using that to suspend it inside my lampshade to hold the paper I'm going to put around the middle, so that the light bulb doesn't like really glare. I'm using black patina. Now, patina is very dangerous. You don't want to get it on your hands. You don't want to breathe it in a lot. You got to be really careful with it. So I sprayed some on. I have gloves on, and I put plastic down where I'm working. Then I let that sit for a bit and then rinse it off. Right now I'm trying to figure out the size of paper that I want for my lampshade. And here's my finished lampshade. So I have a ring of paper going from the inside of the top circle to that ring that I suspended at the bottom. Thank you for watching. See you next time, and please subscribe. Bye-bye.